what's up? Welcome to the Let Go, Let God podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, I am your host, Erika Ray, and typically on this podcast, I interview different guests and I ask them the question, what's a life-changing lesson the Lord has taught you? And it's been incredible. I've learned from so many different people and have gotten to hear so many cool stories, and the Lord has really been putting it on my heart to share my story with you guys. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. I'm going to be sharing parts of my testimony, and I've been writing out my life story, which has been so cool to do, and I'm excited to share parts of it with you guys today. So I am just going to pray, and then we're going to get right into it. Dear Father, I thank you so much for your word and for your wisdom and for your guidance and for your hand upon our lives. You are just so good. All glory and honor and praise go to you, God. I just pray that the words fall freely off my lips and my tongue today, Lord. Just whatever you want me to speak about, Lord, I just pray that you bring it about, Lord. Your will be done. All glory to you. And I just pray that you bless this podcast, and I pray that it reaches the people that you want it to reach, God. Amen. All right, so I'm just going to start from the beginning. So I remember really early on as a child being 5 years old or so, and I struggled with anxiety. And I remembered I would just worry about anything and everything. I would worry that I was going to get sick. I was worried that I was going to get shot. I was worried that something was going to happen to me or my parents. And pretty much anything that I saw or consumed happening, I believed that it could happen to me, and I worried about it. And that's where all of my anxiety stemmed from, was just, I don't even know, just me consuming and seeing different things. But that's where it all started, I guess I should say. I remember being 5 years old and accepting Christ into my life. I remember I was sitting on my bed at home and I did the salvation prayer with my mom, and I remember even after that, I said the prayer so many more times because I was worried that I didn't say it good enough or it wasn't right and that I wasn't going to get into heaven. And so you can see that anxiety just kind of took over in every area. But I would say most of my life, from as early as I can remember, I've been a Christian. And so time kind of went on and I struggled with that anxiety, and then high school hit, and I just remember I got struck with a wave of just depression and sadness and just isolation. I remember thinking, what is this? Why is this happening to me? I had a lack of motivation. Nothing was wrong. Honestly, I had a pretty great childhood. I'm very blessed. And I didn't know where it came from, and I felt kind of ashamed of it, and I didn't want to talk about it because it was uncomfortable. So I felt so sad. And then also I struggled with obsessive-compulsive disorder, where I just had these reoccurring thoughts in my brain of just stupid things. Most of it was around perfectionism, and I felt as though I had to do everything perfectly in order to live a good life, which is ridiculous because that's literally impossible. So I was really struggling with depression and OCD, and these thoughts were just consuming my brain. And it got to a point, I think I stayed silent about it for about a year. And then I finally got up the courage. I remember the day too. I was upstairs and I was so distraught. And I just remember walking down. I was terrified. My heart was beating out of my chest. And I went in to talk to my mom, and I was like, Mom, I think I need to go to therapy. And she was so sweet. She was like, okay, she helped me get set up. We found a therapist, and I went and I talked about everything that was going on. And at that time as well, I was working with this therapist, and then I actually got on medication for everything, and it seemed to work at the time. So that was my first encounter with those things. And then time went on, and I started to have stomach issues. And this mainly started whenever I had just started college. And so I started to have these stomach issues, like massive pains in my stomach and bloating and just so much uncomfortability. Like it was not normal, not like your typical stomach ache. And it just was lingering and wouldn't go away. And so I started to go and see different doctors and get on different supplements and try different diets. And, I just briefly started this process and I was trying to figure out what was happening. And nothing really seemed to work. I got on some medications and then the doctors told me to stop taking the medications because there was recalls on them. And so I was trying to figure all of that out. But then my life came to a complete pause. I'm still in college at this point, about my second year, I believe. And my life totally came to a pause because my brother had gotten into a really bad car accident. And at this time in my life, everything, the anxiety, the depression, the OCD, the stomach, physical health issues, everything just got pushed to the side because my family and I, we were pretty much consumed by this accident that had happened with my brother for about 2 months. So I would say about 2 months we practically lived in the hospital. My life looked like waking up, going to my classes, I was in community college at the time, and then going straight to the hospital and spending the rest of the day there. And I would just do that every single day. I did that for about 2 months because my brother was in the hospital, and by the grace of God, he is alive and he has done so much healing, and in that process, he had to go see so many doctors and whatnot, and so we were just there for them. We didn't know what was going to happen, and I just was living in this trance of, okay, I got to be there for him and my family, and I wanted to be there. And so all of my personal issues got pushed to the back burner during that time. And so after all of that craziness, I started getting back to my normal life, and everything started to come up again, mostly the anxiety and just the physical health stuff. And I remember my brother and I, the one that had just gotten into the accident, we decided to take a trip to New Jersey to see a friend. And we went to New Jersey and I was feeling not super great. I was feeling anxious. I just figured, you know what, I just gotta go. I just gotta do it. And so I went on the trip, and it was the worst trip of my life. And I had the most traumatic experience of my life while I was on this trip. So I had woken up in the middle of the night and I had a massive panic attack. And I had panic attacks before in the past. That was something that I struggled with. But this one was different. My heart was racing. I literally felt like I was going to die. And usually I have enough brain power to be like, Erika, you're panicking, you're fine. But this time I was not okay. And I told my brother and my friend, I was like, guys, you need to take me to the emergency room right now. And so we went to the emergency room. This is probably around midnight, 1 a.m. And they took me into the room and they took my vitals. And I straight up told them, I was like, listen, I have a history of panic attacks. I just need you to tell me I'm okay. And honestly, like, give me some drugs to calm me down. And they were like, okay, well, we'll be right back. And they had me come with them. They were like, you need to come with me. And I was really worked up at this point. I didn't want to be alone. And so I was like, okay, well, let me go get my brother. And they told me I couldn't bring him back with me. And I just was like, okay, the more I listen to them, the sooner I can get what I need and leave. And so this is when the turn of events happened. So they told me I needed to come back with them, and they took me back into the psych ward of this hospital. And they put me in this room. They made me take off all my clothes and put on the hospital clothes. And I just remember taking my phone and hiding it in my bra because I didn't want them to take that away from me. So I was alone and I was scared. And I remembered they put me in this tiny room, and next to me there was this lady screaming, and next to that on the other side was this man who was just like taking off his clothes. And I remembered in that moment I had completely dissociated. So if you've ever experienced a panic attack before, the worst thing you can do to someone who's feeling really anxious is lock them in a tiny room and tell them they can't leave. And I just remember I completely dissociated. I couldn't even tell like what was real or not. It's like I was looking at my body from outside, and it was the scariest moment of my life. And I remember I got my phone out and I was texting my brother. I was like, get me out of here. And I was so worked up. And to be honest, at this time, I didn't really have, weapons to fight with, like spiritual warfare weapons, because I didn't really know what spiritual warfare even was. And now that I'm looking back at all of this stuff, I realize that everything that I've been going through was totally spiritual warfare. And at this time, I was just scared and panicky and I wanted to get out. I wasn't, I mean, I remember I called my youth pastor's wife and I was like, please pray for me, because I had been praying and all of these things, but I wasn't fighting the way that I fight now. And I fight pretty aggressively now, which I'll get into that in a little bit. But I remember my brother came back and he was so pissed off. He was like, what is going on? And after a couple of hours, finally, the doctor came in and was like, I don't know why you're back here. You're fine. You can leave. And in that moment, I mean, it's all so much a blur. I even had to go talk to my brother about it. And I'm like, was that even real? Because it just doesn't feel real. But I remember just being like, really? You put me in this, through all this trauma and nothing was even wrong? And it was just not a fun time. So I finally got out and I remember leaving, and then I remember on the way out too, one of the nurses, she asked me if I was taking anything for my anxiety, and I told her that I had some Xanax, and she was like, can I buy some off of you? And I was like, what is wrong with these people? I was like, I'm never coming back to New Jersey again. And so I just wanted to get out of there. I didn't even care what was happening. I was like, get me out of here. So we go back, and when I came back from that trip, I was not okay. I remember I had gotten home and I went totally back into backsliding into my anxiety, all of that stuff. The OCD and the depression had kind of gone away, but my anxiety skyrocketed. I remember I didn't leave my house for 2 months. I remember that I needed to get some kind of fixing. I needed to do something so that I could stop living my life like this. And I remember I started going back to therapy and I got back on medication because I remembered that that helped in the past. And before, when I had mentioned I got on those things in high school, I was probably on them for about 6 months, and then I got off of them and was managing, and then all that crazy stuff happened with my health and then my brother. And so I was kind of a mess at that point. So I went back to what I knew, what I thought worked was the medication and the therapy. And man, I was just messed up after that. I remember it started creeping into other areas of my life, and I remember I can't even pinpoint when it started, but I just know that all of the feelings that I got in that hospital, they started leaking into me whenever I was driving at night specifically. And so every time I would get in the car at night and drive by myself or even with other people, everything would come back to me, and I would remember myself in that room and like that feeling of claustrophobia and not being able to get out. And I don't really know why, honestly, I don't really know why it manifested in the car. It could be a mixture of my brother's accident was a car accident or just maybe a small space. I don't know. One of the biggest things I've realized too with things that we're dealing with, a lot of times we're not going to understand why they happen or where they came from. And let me just give y'all a tip. You don't need to understand those things, because God understands them. And instead of focusing on the problem, focus on the solution and focus on Jesus. And I didn't know that at the time, and now I do. But I always think of that verse. It's Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, where God talks about how his ways and his thoughts are higher than ours. And so we don't need to be so consumed on the whys. It's just like, okay, this is happening. Let's fix our gaze elsewhere. Anyways, so this thing started manifesting into my car, and I was just so consumed. I didn't end up driving. I wouldn't drive at night for I think like 2 or 3 years, I did not drive at night because I got so scared and so worked up. And at this point, I just kind of was living my life. I just decided to kind of go through the motions and just do what I could to avoid feeling those weird feelings. I wasn't actually dealing with the problem. So let's flash forward to I am now on my third year of college. So I decided to go to Tucson. I was living in Phoenix. I go to Tucson to go to U of A, and I just figure, you know what? Let's get a fresh start. Let's move away. Let's run away from all my problems pretty much. And so I went away to college and lived your typical college life. I kind of got into the party scene and just was trying to distract myself from the things that were going on. And I figured, you know what? People always tell me time heals all, time heals all. Let me tell you, that is one of the biggest lies that the enemy will tell you, because time alone will not heal all. You have to fight, and you have to fight for that freedom, and you have to fight to work through your issues and your problems and all those things. It's not just going to magically go away. And, you know, God is the ultimate healer. He can take things away. But we can't rely on that. We can't rely on, okay, God, like, I'm going to just wake up tomorrow and I'm going to feel better. We can pray for that, but we can't always expect that to be, you know, we have to do our part. So anyways, towards the end of college, I got a job actually. And so my last semester, I moved to Scottsdale, Phoenix, and finished out my semester online and was working this new job. And this new job was really good for me because it got me out of that scene and I started kind of getting my life back together. And so I started seeing a new doctor. I kind of realized that Western medicine wasn't really working for me. They were just giving me prescriptions and stuff like that, and I wasn't a big fan. So I started seeing holistic doctors and got on all the diets possible, all the supplements possible, and I even started seeing different holistic doctors because they kind of were figuring it out, but still not to the root of the problem. So started getting back on track with that. I started seeing a new therapist as well, and she was a good Christian counselor. She helped me so much. And so I'm starting to get my life back together. I ended up graduating. I got my degree in psychology, and then I worked in a mental health clinic for about 6 months because I wanted to do psychology. I wanted to be a therapist. That's ultimately what I wanted to do. And I worked in a mental health clinic for 6 months, and I almost went mentally insane again. I realized that me sitting there listening to all these people struggle with the things that I had struggled with was not a good idea and not healthy for me at all. And I remember I got so worked up one day that I ran out of the health building and I called my mom, and I was having a full-on panic attack. I was like, you need to come get me. I'm not okay. I totally got attacked by the enemy. That is one of the most heavy spiritual attacks I've ever had in my entire life. I felt like he totally just took everything that I was struggling with and hit it with me at once in my brain. And I felt like, the best way I can describe it is I couldn't even get like a grip on reality. I didn't even know like if I was real. I don't know. He freaked me out. And my mom came, and I remember we sat in her car for an hour or two, and I was like, I can't drive home. I'm freaked out. And I just remember, you know, she sat with me, and then the next day I went into work and I quit. I was like, I can't do this. So let me just say too that you don't know if you're going to like something until you try it, because I literally thought I wanted to be a therapist, and I was like, I cannot do this. And I wouldn't have known that though if I didn't try it. So it's good to try different things. But anyways, so moving on. After that, I kind of just started getting random jobs to stay afloat and figuring out what I wanted to do next. I was really liking the doctors I was working with, and so I thought maybe I'll get into holistic and naturopathic health. And so I kind of was tapping into that because I felt like my body was starting to heal, and so I kind of dipped my toes into that and was working with a naturopathic doctor for a little bit. I went back to the other job that I was doing in sales and just did some social media stuff. I worked at an autistic school for a little bit. I just tried like all these different things because I just, again, was trying to stay afloat and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. So I remember, I'm just going through the motions. I'm just living my life. My life's okay at this point. And then I really get hit with life in 1 week. I remember in 1 week, I lost my job. I had to move out of the house that I was living in and had nowhere to go. I lost my boyfriend of 3 years. And then I got a health diagnosis that was for real this time. I had just started seeing a new doctor and I took all these tests, which I had not done before. And he told me what was really wrong and the root of all my issues. And so all these things happened at once. And I just remember that week, that week was the most peaceful week of my entire life, which makes no sense. But it's the peace that surpasses all understanding that is talked about in Philippians 4:7. And I just remember after that week, I decided to fully surrender everything to God. As I mentioned before, whenever I was 5, I gave my life to Christ, and all throughout my life, I had been doing what I could to live a good Christian life, but I didn't realize what it meant to really live for Jesus until about 2 years ago when I fully surrendered. And I just remembered thinking, God, my way is not working. I want your way. And so I fully surrendered everything to Christ. And after that, he just started working in me. I just remember he was just ever so gently stripping things away from me one by one. And also, if you're in this stage of life where you're doing things maybe you shouldn't be, or you haven't fully surrendered, like, that's okay. I also just want to encourage you that it doesn't all happen overnight. So I remember this was around August where I fully was just like, I give it all to you. And then I remember he slowly started to take things away from me. My birthday is in October, and I remember in October for my birthday, I went out and did things that I shouldn't have done. And to be honest, like, I was still doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, and I didn't feel that conviction, but I was still drawing close to God. And the closer I got to him, the closer he got to me, just like he talks about in James, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. And the closer I got to him, the closer he got to me, and I really felt like I didn't want my life anymore. And so it wasn't just a one and done thing. It was a continual pursuit of a relationship with Christ, and he ever so gently just totally transfixed my gaze on him and just started removing things out of my life. And so I stopped I completely stopped drinking. I stopped any promiscuity that was going on with boys. I stopped just using impure language. I even started kind of switching my friend group around, and not that I was in any terrible holes in any of these things, but it's just, you don't want to flirt with temptation. Like, you're just setting yourself up for disaster. And so God just slowly started shifting my life into this beautiful direction. And I remember I started a hiking small group with the church that I was in, and that was amazing. I started getting super plugged into the church in other ways as well. And I was just doing, taking one step after the other. And then I remember 1 week God just told me, he was like, okay, it's time for you to move churches. And so I started searching, and I didn't really know why. Everything was going well, so I started searching around, and he put me into a new church. And I just it was one of the coolest things, because right after that obedience, like, so many more fruits came into my life. I met my best friend, and I met so many new people at this church, and so many more opportunities opened up to what I believe God's purpose and plan is for in my life. And it's so cool, because it's like when we follow God's obedience, he'll slowly start to reveal his plan to us. And it's the coolest thing. And so I would say about 2 years ago, ever since I surrendered, I feel like I've seen God work more in my life in the past 2 years than in my whole entire life. And so now I'm in such an amazing spot. And let me tell you, I'm still working on health issues. I still battle anxiety, but I've got God by my side. And through all of those things, he's taught me so much. What I was missing was I wasn't fighting. I was just pushing through, and I was just believing the lie that time would take it all away. And when I fully surrendered God, I could make this podcast so long talking about all the lessons that God has taught me, and they're so truly incredible, and I would love to share them, and I hope that I do get to share them with you guys. But for the sake of this podcast, it's just he's done so many incredible things in my life, and all I have to say is my favorite verse of the Bible is Matthew 6:33, which is seek the kingdom first and his righteousness, and all else will be given to you. And really nothing matters if you're not seeking him. It doesn't matter what job you're in. It doesn't matter how many friends you have. It doesn't matter what other people think of you. Like, nothing matters if you don't have God in your life. And when you start to seek God, he will reveal all the plans that he has for you in your life. And it's the most beautiful thing. And so that's what I did that week when I got hit with all those things. I just was like, okay, God, I choose you, I seek you. And I didn't know what was going to come after that, but I just decided to be obedient and take one step in front of the other. And I totally got misdirected and misguided along the way. 100%. I had some backslides, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. I was going to keep going. And so wherever you're at in your journey right now, you can make the decision to just fully surrender and say, okay, God, your ways are higher than my ways, and I want your path for me. And so another thing I just want to touch on too is something that God has taught me is that the obedience totally trumps and overpowers the outcome. The outcome does not matter, because a lot of the times the outcome is not even what we think it's going to be. And when you're following God, a lot of the times the outcome is way better than what you think it's going to be. And so don't focus on the outcome, focus on the obedience. What is God asking you to do today in this moment? When you struggle with physical health issues, or when you struggle with mental health issues, it's just one of the hardest things, because you just feel incapacitated. You feel like you can't do anything. You feel like you can't move. You feel a lack of motivation, all those things. And I remembered thinking, how am I supposed to live my life like this? And I remembered having all those thoughts like, okay, once I get better, then I'll do this. Once I'm healed, then I'll do this. Once I have this amount of money, I'll do this. Once I get this job, I'll do this. And God was like, no. The healing is going to happen right now, and you're going to do what you can right now. And when I had started my small groups and whatnot, I remembered there were times I was so sick, and I just had to trust and believe that God would give me the strength to do whatever he wanted me to do for that day or that season of my life, because God is constant, and our situations and our circumstances are ever changing. And so let's focus on what's constant versus the things that are going up and down, the roller coasters in our lives. And so a prayer that I started praying is, Lord, please give me the strength to do your will, to do what you want me to get done today, because I have an agenda for myself, but I want to follow your agenda. And the more I pray that prayer, the more I just surrender. I used to be one of those people that had every single second planned out. Like, my schedule was so jam-packed. Like, if there was a minor inconvenience, I'd be like, no, like, this ruined everything. But now, I live on Jesus's clock. And so I wake up in the morning, I have my schedule that I have, but I wake up and I'm like, God, here's the day. I surrender it to you, because if he has a plan for me to go and talk to somebody or to go and do something, then that trumps whatever I want to do, just because I want to get certain things done. And of course, I need to have an agenda. I need to be responsible because I can't just be living in la la land all the time. But it is so cool when you let God take over your agenda, let me tell you, because things happen that you would have never expected. It's so fun and so exciting. It's like, ooh, God, what are you going to do? What are you going to do today? And so those are some of the lessons that I've learned. Like I said, I've learned a lot. Another big thing that I've learned too is whenever you're facing battles, you need to fight. And if you're not fighting, then you're just going to get squashed by whatever is trying to attack you. And as I mentioned earlier, I truly believe that all of those things that were going on in my life, I truly believe they were spiritual attacks and oppression. And when I look back at it, I can feel the darkness and the evilness and just all of those things that were disguised as just these earthly things that we have, like mental health or physical health, whatever. And I pray into every single thing now. If I need to go see the doctor, I pray into it. That was another big thing that God taught me. I spent so much time and energy and money on doctors and supplements and therapists and all of those things. And I remember one week God hit me with like, Erika, you need to fast. You need to fast from all these earthly things that you're doing and ask me what to do. And so for the whole week, I fasted from all the diets and the supplements. I even had gotten all these test results and I fasted from them. I didn't even look at them. And I remember after that week, God had revealed to me, he said, you're going to earthly things to heal you and you're not coming to me. And I'm the ultimate healer. And that hit me like a ton of bricks because ever since then, that's how I live my life. I'm like, okay, God, should I buy this supplement? I'm like, okay, God, should I make this purchase? Okay, God, should I take this job? And just every single decision, I just invite God into it. And I'm like, okay, whatever you want. And I was going to earthly things before I was going to God. I was going to therapists. I was going to supplements. I was going to food, just all these different things. And I wasn't seeking the healer. I was seeking all of the healing things. And those have no power if I'm not seeking the healer. And I truly believe God just wanted to show me that he's the one who's going to heal me, not the other things. And the therapists and the supplements and the diets, those things are so great. Those are tools that God gives us, but he always wants us to remember that he is the healer. So again, there's so many life lessons that I could just go on and on and on about, but seek the kingdom first, fight like heck, because the enemy wants to take you down. God has such a super special assignment for each and every one of you, and he has got no power over your life. And so in 1 John it says, he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. So remember that the Holy Spirit is in you, and he is greater and he is more powerful than anything else in this entire world. And with God, you can overcome anything. He'll never give you anything that's too powerful or anything that's too much, that anything that's too much for you. He will take care of you. And some things that I do to fight off the enemy whenever I have negative thoughts about my health or just anxiety is I get out all my weapons. I read the armor of God, Ephesians 6:10-20. I actually created an album on my phone with a bunch of verses that I just will whip out and read. These are my weapons. So if I'm starting to feel anxious, like I don't focus on why I'm feeling anxious or how I'm feeling anxious or how to fix that. I focus on God and I just read his truths, because I know that the more I infiltrate my brain with his truths, it's going to drown out all the lies and all the things that the enemy has been putting in my brain for so long. So going full circle, and I think to end this, I just want to say that no matter where you're at in life, no matter what you've been through, God can redeem you, God can heal you, God can save you. And so I want to say, first of all, if you haven't given your life to Christ and you're considering doing that, it's just a simple prayer that you can pray. Ask God to come into your life and be your Savior. Ask him for forgiveness for all of your sins and Tell him that you believe that he sent his son to die on the cross. It's those 3 simple things. And then you have Christ as your ultimate savior and healer. And it's so amazing. And so if you're at that spot where you're not really sure if you want to give your life to Christ, pray about it, ask him, think about it, talk about it with some other people, say that prayer. If you're in a spot where you feel so stuck, you feel so lost, you feel you have nothing, that's okay. God can redeem you, and God is really all you need. If you have God, you have more than anything you could ever need, and he will provide. And so just start seeking him, and he will bring everything else to fruition. And last thing is fight. Fight like heck, because you're a child of God. And when you become a child of God, you are already free. And God has already given you freedom from anxiety and illness and depression and all of those things. He has already given you that freedom. But you need to fight to feel that freedom. And no matter what happens on this earth, whenever we get to heaven, we are going to have all of the pain and the hurt and the sickness and the illnesses. All of those things are going to be taken away, and God is going to give us perfect bodies. And so I just always tell myself, no matter what happens on this earth, and I will fight like heck to battle this anxiety and sickness and all of these things. But no matter what happens, even if I don't get the healing that I want on this earth, I know that when I get to heaven, all of it's going to be wiped away. And I know that when I keep my eyes fixed on Jesus, whatever he wants me to accomplish here on earth, in whatever state that I'm in, he will give me the strength as long as I continue to seek him. And so that is a little bit about me. There's a lot more, but that's where we'll start. So I appreciate you guys so much for listening, and thank you so much for listening to all the stories that have been told. You guys are awesome, and I just encourage you to subscribe and like and share. And I just hope that y'all can take something from these podcasts into your daily life. Invite God into your life. Like, I dare you guys to invite him into your life. See what happens. It is so cool. He is so cool. Every day he amazes me. And so thank you guys again so much. I will see you on the next episode.